Rosie always asks, what's your speech going to be called? What's your sermon going to be called? She needs to title it, so it's called Who the Heck Knows? So, do you all know what a strapline is? Are you familiar with the term strapline? It's used in advertising, and the dictionary describes strapline as a line that sums up the brand or company in a line. It's like represents the culture, the identity, and the personality of a brand. Well, my strapline for 2020 is, who the heck knows? And it started off as, who knows? Who knows what's going on? Did this virus really start in an animal market? That's weird. Who knows if it's here and if it's that bad? Who knows? It seems to be happening all around the world. Who knows if it's going to be that bad? Or what's going to happen? Which led into, who the heck knows? We're being told so many different things by so many different people. I mean, our own government representatives couldn't even agree on things. So who's telling the truth? And who's telling lies? Or is it just perspective? Who the heck knows? Is New York gone mad? Or do they know what's going on and maybe we should all be following suit? What should we be doing? And what's going to happen in my state? And how is this going to affect my life? Because let's face it, we all want to know how things are going to affect our lives. And can that many people truly be dying of coronavirus? Are those numbers correct? We hear one thing, and then we'll hear something totally different. Are those conspiracy theories correct? What's really going on here? And what's with the toilet paper shortage as well? I mean, come on. Which then some days led to, who the hell knows? What is going on in this country indeed? And the dread really set in on those days. And the fear. And I think we have all felt it, whether it's personally or we felt it in the collective. And the constant news bombardment, and it was just bad news after bad news. It just set into us. And not only did we have millions of people dying of coronavirus, authorities arguing over what was really happening, conspiracy or alternate theories taking off like wildfire, and some of them were starting to sound pretty plausible. We also had social unrest, and by unrest I mean social storm. People against people because of their beliefs over this coronavirus. People were killing each other because they were asked to wear a mask. Crazy. Groups storming their state capital because they were instituting a lockdown to try and stop the spread of this deadly disease. People arguing with each other as to what was the right way to combat the disease and them forcing their opinions on other people. And then there was the social storm of the racial injustice rearing its ugly head again. What? How can this still be happening? I remember, hold on, I want to just clarify, I was very young. The social uproar of the 70s, of the 60s, and the work equality programs of the 70s and 80s were established. Have we not progressed any more than what we are witnessing this year? Are we as people, as a nation, still that ignorant? But from the injustices and deaths that occurred, there rose a beautiful movement in the Black Lives Matter. We then saw people from all races, excuse me, all nations, and all walks of life start to join this movement to say, enough. Of course, we have people arguing over that as well, and there was a little bit of me that felt sorry for anyone named Karen, but the stories that emerged from Black Lives Matter were heartbreaking. The violence that came from that was heartbreaking. The hooligans that caused so much destruction to innocent people and properties was absolutely maddening. That stole from the message. They were taking away from the clear messages that were coming from the peaceful demonstrations, the Martin Luther King and the John Lewis way, that was having such a huge impact, not only in our nation, but throughout the world. However, the strong messages prevailed. The Black Lives Matter movement was felt in many nations, and many nations rose up together to say, enough. The unity and the promise is beautiful. Long may that continue. We are all one in the eyes of the divine, and may we all look at everyone through the divine within each one of us. Tomorrow we commemorate the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the holiday for tomorrow. And in case anyone doesn't know their history, which I think we all do, but he was a very wise Baptist minister who was a peaceful man, and he was actually the most visible spokesman and activist for civil rights from 1955 until 1968. His words still ring true today. Some quotes from him are, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. The time is always right to do what is right." These are just some of his moral wisdom. It would be wonderful if people would focus on that tomorrow as we remember him, and hold that in their heart and try and practice more of those thoughts. Then there was the political unrest. And again, by unrest, I mean a storm. What have we let ourselves come to as a nation? How can these political beliefs tear apart families, friends, and our country? It has been so painful to see the way so many families and friends have been divided over this, the meanness, the hate, the in your face with my opinion, and I have my right to express it, and if you don't like it, well, that's your problem. So few wanted to actually listen to each other and kind of understand each other. And it was for many, and still is, kind of a civil war. I don't know actually of many people that have been spared this political unrest. I know it's still a personal hurt with me and the divisions it's caused. And I know many others here have spoken of it, that it's happened with their families and friends and how they've best dealt with it. In 2020 and early 2021, it's been an interesting start to the year, hasn't it? We have seen some of the biggest uprisings since the Civil War and the Vietnam War. We've seen more poverty, more health-related deaths, more political-related deaths than ever. When we focus on these factors, it does lead to a sense of dread and a feeling of, who the hell knows what is going on in this world? And my answer to that is, Spirit, God does. And it's by leaning into our faith that we find our strength and our resilience. We as spiritualists know the natural laws of spiritualism, and we believe that all things happen for a reason, even if at the time it is completely unclear, and yes, even ugly and painful. We believe in divine timing. We believe in divine order and the universal laws amongst the many others. We need to remember these and trust. And by the way, if you're not familiar with these laws, they are in a book called The River of Life. I don't know if you're all familiar with that. It's an excellent reference book. And it is available in our bookstore, and that's written by our own Reverend Audrey. And for those of you that have asked about her, she is doing very well, and she's happy and quarantined, or she's quarantined. I'm not sure she's happy being quarantined, but she's healthy being quarantined, and she'll be back with us when she can. And she does keep us in her thoughts and prayers. A few of the natural laws that I want to focus on today are the law of personal responsibility and the law of allowing. As stated in the book, The River of Life, the law of allowing is the recognition of reality of that which is, as well as remaining free from judging it as right or wrong. It's not always easy, is it? Simply removes any emotional attachment to it. In practicing the law of allowing, you learn to let things just be. You recognize that people are acting in accordance with the level of their belief system. Therefore, they make different decisions than you might make if you were in the same circumstances. Whether their behavior is right or wrong is not your place to be judgmental. nor carry any of their negativity into your life. And I'm going to repeat that sentence. Nor carry any of their negativity into your life. In practicing the law of allowing, you should become the observer and then make the decision as to what you want or do not want as part of your life. It is your choice. While it is not necessary to be judgmental of another's choices or behavior, it is important to not acquire emotional attachments to them. Live and let live. If more people practice this, there certainly wouldn't have been all the heat and uproar that we have been finding that we've been seeing. The law of personal responsibility states that although we are interrelated, each individual is accountable for his own conduct and obligations. Throughout life, there is a constant reminder that if you create your own happiness or unhappiness as you abide by the laws of nature, we say that in our declaration every week. Yet, unpleasant things may happen in your life. However, it is how you react that makes the difference. You are ultimately in control of your destiny. It is your responsibility to do what must be done in order to raise your level of consciousness. You can choose to be destructive or constructive based on your very own thought patterns and resulting actions. Understanding brings growth. It requires that the negative patterns be eliminated. Error requires a price to be paid. On the other hand, you can create your desires, however you must truly know yourself in order to fulfill them. Jim Rohn states, you must take personal responsibility. You cannot change the circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself, and that is something you have charge of. Reverend Autry goes on to say, there is no doubt that each must bear his own burden. It is your personal responsibility to make right choices, and that in turn will help you to create your own destiny. You are free to choose to obey or disobey nature's law. We state that each Sunday together, but you must also accept the consequences, which are either reward or retribution. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, one's philosophy is not best expressed in words. It is expressed in the choices one makes. And the choices we make are ultimately our responsibility. I watched a segment on the Today Show where Arnold Schwarzenegger, and in typing that out, I'm glad I didn't have to add that as my last name, addressed the riots in the Capitol Hill last week, and he compared them to his childhood in Austria after World War II. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see that. If you didn't, it's quite a moving thing, and you can find it on YouTube. He said that growing up, he was surrounded by broken men drinking away their guilt from participation in one of the most evil regimes in history. These are examples of personal responsibility and cause and effect. Error requires a price to be paid. Your choices, but you must accept the consequences, reward or retribution. And that retribution can be very harsh, including from your own conscience, your own guilt. We have all experienced that, I'm sure, over some event or the other. So think, and then take personal responsibility before you act. You can change yourself. That is something you have charge of. It is your responsibility to do what must be done in order to raise your level of consciousness. You can choose to be destructive or constructive, based on your very own thought patterns and the resulting actions. And many people have chosen to be constructive during this time. It has been so heartwarming and beautiful to see the unity and see how people are banding together to help each other in many ways during this time. We watched as literally tons of food were given to those in need. Those long, long lines we saw on the news night after night of cars awaiting the generosity of others who were gladly packaging and handing out food to be able to help the less fortunate, those who had fallen on hard times, and those that have always known hard times. Other people were delivering food to those in need that didn't have cars. These actions showed generosity, caring, responding from the heart to others, basic needs, community, and love. We watched as people in lockdown came out onto their balconies to make music together. In Italy, we saw scenes of people playing their musical instruments in spontaneous harmony to the delight and enjoyment for everyone who could hear. In New York, we saw scenes of people coming out onto their balconies or even just sticking themselves out of their windows to be able to join their voices together. They lifted their voices and their hearts as one in unison to lift the spirits and minds of all those who could hear. And these actions showed unity, community, a desire to be more together than we are individually, a desire to help others in whatever way they could, and love. We saw many restaurants and their employees around the world working without compensation to feed the healthcare workers. We saw healthcare workers giving their all, their hearts and their souls, working as many hours as possible. We watched as healthcare workers volunteered and went from state to state, going wherever the need called them to help save lives. All the while, potentially risking their own lives, and for certain, giving up the safety and comfort of their own homes with their own families. Not truly knowing if they would see them again. And these actions showed commitment, service to their fellow man, and love. We watched, literally, as organizations gave their talents to help try and raise the spirits, the hearts, and the souls of the lives of so many. There were free operas on TV, there was musicals, there were special concerts, they filled our TVs and our computers. We had the opportunity to see some musicals we may never be able to afford to see on Broadway. These offerings showed love, generosity, connection, and compassion. Other organizations, learning institutions, and universities, they opened their doors to free classes to help people learn more about mental health, how to help themselves, how to improve their skills for those now having to work from home, that put a whole new focus on things, how to improve their skills for people when they get ready to return to work, so perhaps they would be able to advance their careers when things change. Yale University even offered a course on happiness. These classes gave hope, they gave knowledge, opportunities for self-improvement and resilience, love to help each other, thereby raising the collective. Parades. Oh, those lovely little parades. Do you remember seeing those on TV? They went on all over the country. We could no longer gather together in person, which we all long to do, to have that connection, because we are social beings. Children could no longer attend school, and people were really so lonely. They were hurting, and they missed those connections. So there were drive-by parades. They would celebrate birthdays or anniversaries and graduations and other events. And teachers, they would hold little parades in neighborhoods. I know they certainly did in ours, where the teachers just drove by in a little parade waving to all their students. And some teachers would drop off little parcels to their students, letting them know that they still cared about them and they really missed them, to try and make that connection with them again. And we've seen corporations shift gears to help society to go from doing such things as building cars to then manufacturing ventilators. And many companies started quickly producing masks, medical type, and down to the stylish types, including sparkles, and other protective gear. Companies started providing more online and delivery services so that people don't have to go out. And that was a great service to people whose health was really at risk from this. Okay, yes, you can say, that was excellent business moves on many levels. And granted, it was. However, it also showed a need to help. They were helping serve the needs of the people as quickly as possible. And many people worked very long hours in order to shift those gears in order to serve the people and meet their needs at the time. And this shows caring about one another, ingenuity, compassion, and potential. Marilyn Autry defines personal responsibility as the obligation and liability of an individual in relationship to one's own character and conduct. Let us all take stock of our personal responsibility and where it has been in the last year. How have we exercised it? Where do we see that we could have done better? And maybe correct our course for doing better? Where have we engaged when we should have just observed and stepped away from the negativity, finding a positive solution? I had a high school environmental teacher, Mr. Carey, who I remember fondly. He was a young, humble man who taught us, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Are you part of the solution, or are you part of the problem? We all have choices. We have seen the ugly, way too much ugly. And we've seen it because that's what the media focuses on. And also because there's just been so much of it this year. But we've also seen beauty, and we've seen love from so many people in reaction to all of this ugly. We do not have the choice of what happens around us. Otherwise, our loved ones and our dear friends would never disappoint us. They'd never make a poor choice, and they'd never die. We'd be happy all the time. However, those that crossed our paths might not be in a little bit of trouble. But fortunately, that's not the reality, which is probably a good thing. The reality is, life happens. It is our choice to accept it, accept it is what it is, and decide how we are going to respond. Are we going to dig deep, go within, and strengthen our connection with Spirit so that we can be the beacons of light and hope to ourselves and to others? Are we going to shine hope, love, and peace whenever and wherever possible? Are we going to take positive actions for enlightenment and change? Or will you allow yourself to get sucked into the negativity and be a part of the problem? We are a collective consciousness. How are you feeding that? And what are the choices that you are making? And how are you teaching the world to sing in harmony?